Another type of scheduling related to project management is what is called loading. Loading is the process of assigning work to limited resources. For example, let's suppose that we are building 4 houses and we have 4 different teams or crews that can work on the different houses. Now, based on the expertise of the crew, they have different abilities, different strengths and weaknesses. It takes a different amount of time for them to do a house than a different crew. And each house has different requirements. So because of this, each house takes different times. So what you see here is you see the 4 crews and the 4 houses, and you see the amount of hours that it would take each crew to do each house. So what we need to do is we need to figure out which crew we should assign to which house. Our goal is to minimize the total number of hours that our company is spending on these 4 houses, and ultimately that should reduce the costs to the business. So we'll assume our costs are per hour at this point. So the goal is to minimize the total number of hours. To do loading, where you're assigning work to limited resources, we do a method called row reduction, column reduction. So the way that this works is that you go with the first row, so crew 1, and we find the smallest number in that row. And then what we do is we subtract that number from every number in that row. So notice the smallest number here is 10. So we'll subtract 10 from 20, so we get 10. And 90 minus 10 is 80. And 40 minus 10 is 30. And 10 minus 10 is 0. For the second row, the smallest number in the row is 35. So here we're going to subtract 35 from every number in the row. So 40 minus 35 is 5. 45 minus 35 is 10. 50 minus 35 is 15. And 35 minus 35 is 0. For the crew 3 row, same thing, find the lowest number, which is 25. And we're going to subtract that number from every number in that row. So 30 minus 25 is 5. 70 minus 25 is 45. 35 minus 25 is 10. And 25 minus 25 is 0. Last row, smallest number is 40. And so we subtract 40 from every number in the row. So we get 20 and 5 and 30 and 0. So we have done the first step, which is row reduction. The idea is it's hard to see if we're looking at the original table which crew we should give to which house. Now we can see pretty easily at this point that house 4 requires the least amount of hours regardless of which crew is working on it. But how do you figure out which crew should go to which house? What we're doing is simplifying the numbers by reducing the rows by the smallest number. So this is helping us see a bit more of a comparison between the combinations. So we did row reduction. The next step is to do column reduction. So we need another table. So we're going to have house 1, house 2, house 3, house 4. And we have crew 1, crew 2, crew 3, and crew 4. And this time we're going to take the numbers that are in the column and we're going to find the smallest number in that column and reduce the column by that row, by that amount. So notice here, crew 2, house 1, that number's 5. So we're going to subtract 5 from everything in that column. So we get 5, 0, 0, 15. In the house 2 column, the smallest number is 5. So let's subtract 5 from everything in that row. So 75, 5, 40, and 0. Then in house 3 column, the smallest number is 10, so we do 20, and 5, and 0, and 20. And in the last row, all the numbers are 0, so you're subtracting 0, since it's the lowest number, from zeros, and you get more zeros. So we've done the row reduction, we've done the column reduction. Now what we're looking for is we are going to look for where we have a row or a column with only one zero. So can you find a row or a column that contains only one zero? So for example, in this first row, you will see that there is only one zero, which means we should assign crew 1 to house 4. Once you do this, crew 1 is off the table, house 4 is off the table, and again we are going to look for where do you have only one zero in a row or a column. So notice for crew 2, because we're now ignoring house 4, there's only one zero in that row. So crew 2 is going to work on house 1. Crew 2 is now off the table, house 1 is off the table. So now for crew 3, notice in that row there's only one zero. So crew 3 is going to take house 3, which means crew 3 is off the table, house 3 is off the table, so crew 4 is going to do house 2. So you have just assigned the crews to each of the houses. We could then figure out what the total cost of that is by going back to the original table. So crew 1 is doing house 4, crew 2 is doing house 1, crew 3 is doing house 3, and crew 4 is doing house 2. So here we have the total number of hours. We have 10 hours on house 4, 40 hours on house 1, 35 hours on house 3, and 45 hours on house 2. So the total number of hours our company is spending on these 4 houses we can find by simply adding up that information. So we have 40 plus 45 is 85, plus 10 is 95, and then as we add 35, we get 130, and we would multiply that times $60 an hour to get the total cost to this project. Okay. So that's how you load when you have limited resources and you need to assign essentially 1 for 1. So 1 crew or team per activity.